Hello and welcome to ThinkTree Discussions. My name is Kush, Kumar, the CEO of ThinkTree, and today I'm talking to Ravi Nahar. Ravi Nahar is the founder of the Ramayana Decoded on Facebook. Hi Ravi, how are you?
Hiya, I'm very well, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. So let's start by asking, tell us a little bit about your background.
My background, so professionally, I have qualifications in biomedical sciences and business economics. Professionally, I work in sales and marketing in the pharma industry.
Okay, excellent. So, for those people who don't know about Kriya Yoga, can we have your opinion of what Kriya Yoga is?
Kriya Yoga is probably one of the oldest systems of yoga within the kind of Vedic literature, which is not religious, it's purely scientific and philosophical. And Kriya Yoga, although in the West and in the East, it's kind of portrayed as meditative yogic science and just purely for a spiritual journey. Kriya Yoga is actually a system which combines your professional, so your practical day-to-day life with your family, your friends, with a spiritual life. And that was the original purpose of Kriya Yoga when it was disseminated into the West.
That's quite interesting because if on first instance you ask people about yoga, Kriya Yoga, it's often linked to something based in India and based in possibly religious terms as well. So that's interesting. So how does this fit in with the Ramayana Decoded? So for those people who don't know what the Ramayana is, what's the Ramayana?
So the Ramayana is probably one of the oldest known texts, Vedic text in the world. It's the oldest, it is associated to a religion, but it's not a religion. It's a story which is written by Bhagwan Valmiki, and it's a story about how a king has to send one of his sons into exile, and his wife and his brother, and their journey through the dark jungles of India, in ancient India, and how they fight an evil person called Ravan, who captures his wife. And it's the whole kind of interaction of the characters and the events and what happens over the 14 years. But the Ramayana, it's when we decode the Ramayana, it's more philosophical, scientific and spiritual. So it's written in Sanskrit, the oldest language known. And when you decode the Sanskrit language with the events and the characters and the interactions, what you begin to start finding is a totally different story. So every scripture is written on 3 levels of understanding based upon a person's kind of, what we say, their consciousness or their awareness. And it's the story, so you get the physical story, the interaction with the characters. And then underneath that there's a science, it's a spiritual science. And then even below that is the actual practice, which is the Kriya Yoga lessons that we're developing with ThinkTree.
Okay, so that was all fair and well in its time.
Yeah.
We're talking thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So how do you bring that into today's culture, into today's lifestyle, into today's thought process? How does that work?
So a lot of it is based around, if you're looking at, once you decode the story and you're looking at the science behind it, there's a lot happening within quantum physics and consciousness and meditation and mindfulness. There's loads of research from MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. But if you're looking at it from a personal development point of view, let's pick one character in the Ramayana, Lakshman. When you take the Sanskrit word Lakshman, it means concentration or focus. Now, part of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, he has 8 steps. One of them is known as dharana, which is concentration. In your practical life, to be able to succeed in your academics, to succeed in your career, you need concentration. If you can't concentrate, you can't do the activities that you've been asked to do. You can't achieve the goals that you've set yourself out to do. Because our mind, and we can relate this back to personal development, self-help books like Think and Grow Rich or 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, a key skill that very successful people have is their levels of concentration. They're able to focus very specifically on certain tasks in a very short space of time and be able to do them at a level that the vast majority of people are not able to do.
So that's interesting. You're talking about concentration. So that how does that work with people with ADHD or similar kind of concerns, health and well-being issues? How does that work? Is that something that they can use, or
It's something they could possibly use. I mean, meditative techniques, they are for people that are able to do them. You have to physically be able to do them and mentally be able to do them. There are, we've had discussions, well, I've had discussions with psychiatrists about these kind of these topics, and they've always said that you have to have a certain level of physical and mental ability to be able to do them. And the vast majority of people are in that position. What they don't really understand is how to do it. So this is the reason why, if you look at people like Tony Robbins, who talks about, 95% of people don't succeed, 5% of people do. If you take 25-year-old individuals, take 100 of them, ask them what their goals are, by the age of 65, only 5 of them will actually achieve their goal. And the reason being is it's not because they haven't got the skill set, they haven't got the knowledge, or they haven't got the backing, or in the wrong environment. It's that their concentration levels and their awareness it started wavering at some point within their career, within their business life. You will always see people who have succeeded and succeeded at a very, very high rate refuse failure. But you have to have a concentrated mind, and you have to have an expanded consciousness, which is what the things within the Ramayana and Vedic literature teach, that you have to be able to decode, because for too long we have been told certain things about certain aspects of Vedic literature, which is not wrong, but it's not right either.
so how do you become an expert? How is this your specialism for decoding the Ramayana?
So I was taught the Ramayana from a very young age. My mother used to read the Ramayana to me at the age of about 6 or 7. I naturally always had an interest in meditation for whatever reason. I don't know, it was something that I was always interested in. And then I came across the Ramayana, which was a serial created in India by a gentleman called Ramayana Decoded, which was very globally, it was a massive hit. And from that, my kind of interest within yoga started. And it was actually my uncle that had told me about Kriya Yoga and said, never mind reading books, practice Kriya Yoga, and everything, all the answers will come to you. Mm-hmm. So that was at the age of about 15, about 20 or 25 years ago. So since then, I've been practicing Kriya Yoga. But probably over the last kind of 3 years, it really started coming out, more of an interest, spending a lot more time practicing Kriya Yoga. Not reading as many books. A lot of people ask me, have you read the Ramayana? Have I read the Ramayana from every single page? No, I haven't. But I could flip to any page and I can tell you what the author was talking about at a very deep spiritual level. Bring that back to personal development in a language that the vast majority of people now understand.
Okay, that's fascinating stuff. So, obviously, this is open to anybody and everybody.
Yes, it's universal.
It's universal. And what are the next steps for you then? How are you? What are you doing with Kriya Yoga, Ramayana Decoded? What are you doing?
So at the moment, I've got a couple of people that are actually testing the courses, and I'm coaching them through it. They've got their own challenges within their life at different stages, and they're using some of the techniques. So the dharana, the concentration technique that we teach, how to expand your consciousness. So that's all happening at the moment. What we'd like to do is to give more people the opportunity to learn this stuff. And there's really interesting knowledge in there. I'm not just saying it because I created it, but an example is dharma, which is, historically always been known as righteousness. But then if you look at personal development, self-help, and neuro-linguistic programming, what's right to you is not right to me. So instantly the whole concept of dharma changes, because it's righteousness. But what is righteousness? What's righteousness to one person might be totally different to another person, and we explore what dharma actually means.
I see. So it goes right down to an individual level.
Yes.
And it's not one size fits all.
No, it's tailored. The course is tailored in such a way that you can mold it to your own journey.
Excellent. So, what are you're talking about courses? You're talking about putting this together. So, what are the stages then? How does somebody who's maybe watching this interview or who's maybe seen the webinar that you've done for ThinkTree, how does somebody get involved in all of this?
So they would have to go through ThinkTree, become an affiliate member, and they will have access to the first series of courses. Now, I always say that it's not, a lower level, intermediate, and high level. The very, very first course goes through concentration and how to expand your awareness. And that itself is absolutely the foundation of everything that you want to do in the higher techniques. So things like pranayama, yoni mudra, the labhya kriya, navi kriya, all the kind of higher yogic techniques. You have to have a very certain level of concentration, which we call super concentration, to be able to get the full impact and effect of those techniques.
So what kind of successes have you had with this in the past, or had, since?
Well, I've used these a lot. Okay. So if I take this back when I was at university, concentration and expanded consciousness, which is being aware of what's happening around you and being able to see what's going to happen. I was probably one of the first people to combine biomedical sciences with business economics. Right. And I remember back in 2003, Cambridge University were in the process of developing their MPhil in bioscience, I think it was, in society. And then London School of Economics did something about a year after that. But I could already see that happening. I could see how it was so important to have a business economics degree combined with biology or biomedical sciences, because that's just the way the industry was going. And I myself ended up in sales and marketing in the pharma industry. So it can be applied anywhere. Okay.
So, and do you find that part of the people, because you've got quite a big following on Facebook.
Yeah.
I think you've got how many?
It's over 300,000.
Over 300,000 people who follow you on Facebook. So that's quite interesting, because majority of them are from the East.
Yes.
Yeah? So what's their take on this? Because clearly you've not got the Eastern accent. You're from
I'm
Glasgow. Yes. So how do they take to kind of your understanding and your different focus?
Yeah.
What's the?
I think what's happened is that the millennial group, which is the biggest group that use social media, so that's how we communicate with the vast majority of people nowadays. Mm-hmm. The biggest group is the millennial group, and in India, the vast majority of the millennial groups have been educated in the West. So they've come with a very westernized kind of thinking, very logical, questioning their religion, questioning their practices, and then come back to India. And for example, a cultural event that most people around the world know about is Diwali, the Festival of Lights.
Yeah.
People get involved in that because they like the whole kind of cultural part of it, being with the family, the food, the music, the colours. But what's the actual meaning? So then I come across and say, well, Diwali is actually, when you decode it, it means samadhi. It's the internal light, and there's a lot of research around that as well, about how endogenous Lexus light within the lateral ventricles activates this thing within your brain regions that, even quantum physicists call nirvana.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that I teach. But what I say to these people is that to be able to experience that, you have to have a concentrated mind, because these yogis, these meditators, and these Buddhist monks who did practice this and did achieve that level of experience had a very, very strong concentration.
Yeah, and I mean, concentration is great, and we know certainly in education when we're trying to concentrate students, we do things in bite-sized chunks, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before. So there is an element of a challenge there to keep concentrated. So what's the focus there then? How do we maintain a level of concentration?
There's a lot of concentration is very closely related to the breath, because the mind. When I go through the course, we talk about the brain, consciousness, and the mind, and try to understand them as three different entities that are linked, and they're linked to breath control. So within the Ramayana, at the beginning, you asked me, how does it relate to what we're doing in the course? In the Ramayana, the breath is related to a character called Hanuman. Hanuman, when you break the Sanskrit word down, means to kill the mind. Now, if you look through personal development and self-help, the breath is a very important part of how you conduct yourself within a very tense environment, very pressured environment. Your breathing pattern changes. So in neurolinguistic programming, I had learned to observe the breath of the people that you're negotiating with, And from the breath, you can have a very good idea of how they're thinking, whether they're calm or whether they're angry or whether they're just, they're just in a totally different state of mind. And you can start, negotiating in a very different way.
Excellent. But I mean, it all sounds really, really fascinating. I could probably talk to you for hours about this. Yeah. So, what are the next steps then? What are the next steps for you?
So the next steps for me is to get these courses out, get the first course out, officially out there, and get people to start joining up to it. And then after that, the second and the third courses are already in development, which are the higher techniques. And what I'm not going to do is just give people these techniques. So, the way I look at it is that if you can prove that you can do the concentration and awareness, then there's only worthwhile you taking it further.
Right.
For example, you want to learn how to do pranayama, you want to learn how to do navi kriya. I want people to get the most out of it rather than just give it to them for the sake of giving it to them.
So let me ask you why.
Because there's a certain element of secrecy that was around this, initially. And even though Kriya Yoga and meditation yoga, etc., is worldwide now, it's part of a massive $1 trillion industry, it's very commercialized. And the thing is, when I've got a client in front of me, what am I actually physically giving them? They've given me their money, but what am I giving them? I'm not giving them anything tangible. I want them to give them a skill that they are able to take and apply to any part within their life and succeed within that. And I want them to have that because I've personally done it. For example, in the first year, 2016, when I launched Ramayana Decoded, professionally, I was doing very, very well. I was the number one sales versus target within my company for the franchise I was working within. I was winning sales awards, and at the same time, I was building a digital platform from scratch. I didn't know anything about digital platforms, but I'd studied it in a very short space of time with a concentrated mind and an expanded awareness, and was able to achieve, I think it was about 150,000 to 200,000 in the first year.
Wow.
Very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, Ravi, wish you all the best luck, and obviously you're partnering with ThinkTree to create your courses. Yes. And have them on our digital platform.
Yep.
For education as well. So, is there any one last thing you want to bit of advice, guidance you want to give our
advice
viewers?
Or guidance? So join up to the courses. There's. I'm not just saying this because I wrote them, but there's a lot of things in there which you will not find anywhere else, because it doesn't always come from what I write. Does not come from what I've read from somewhere else. Having a background in biomedical science, it comes down to research papers. And when I'm reading a book, I want to know where the author has got the information from. The articles, how were they weighted? Something like Scientific American's probably has a bigger weighting than a journal that's lower down in the ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wouldn't consider. But a lot of this comes from my experience and intuition as well. Excellent. And looking at it from a different way and actually applying it in real life and making it happen.
Excellent. So thank you.
Join up to the courses.
Thank you very, very much, Ravi. So if you'd like to more information, then you can find a webinar on the YouTube channel if you're a member of ThinkTree. We'll have details of the courses on the website very, very soon.
Yep.
In fact, they may already be there. And if you'd like to subscribe to the YouTube channel for ThinkTree, then please do so. So thank you very much, Ravi.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.
Thank you.